Hey everyone, Duke here, and today we're making a refresher guide, or potentially first-timer guide, to the Garden of Salvation raid. This raid has been in the game for a while, as you may or may not know, but that is going to be getting craftable weapons here in the new episode, so I figured now is a good time to basically go through and give you a complete walkthrough to this raid. Again, if you haven't run it in a very long time, I know a lot of people potentially only ran it once ever, maybe to get their divinity, or again, maybe just have never ran it. So I use this kind of style of guide for both my Riven guide and the Salvation's Edge guide that I did in terms of like going back through a VOD and kind of talking through what we're doing as I'm doing it. So we're going to do that again for this raid. So for the first encounter of Garden of Salvation, there's going to be two separate teams that are doing two very separate things. The first team that's basically sitting back with the boss is going to be needing to pick up these little cubes that he'll be spitting on the ground. If you do not pick that up within a couple seconds, it will explode and kill your entire team. Now, do note that basically every time he moves from the center, like he's always going to start in the center, he'll move to his side, and then he's going to spit out one of the cubes. Then he'll come back to the center, and then when he moves again, you're going to want to follow him, because that's going to be when he spits out the next cube. Now, do keep in mind that, again, we're split up 3 and 3 here, and that cube, when you pick it up, gives the debuff Voltaic Overflow, which you can see on the left side of your screen, and if you try to pick up another one while that timer is still active, it will kill you. So it's important to have your next teammate go ahead and pick up the next cube, and again, if you need that third teammate there as well to pick up the third cube. Other than that, you're pretty much just killing enemies as they spawn. Do note that you will get two Cyclopses that you saw there a second ago. Those spawn in when the team ahead of you kills their Cyclops. So it's really important that when the team that's pushing forward is pushing forward to call out when they kill their Cyclops so that you know when those other Cyclopses are going to spawn. Now, once the other team opens up the next door, which we'll explain that mechanic here in a second, the boss, you'll notice, will just teleport straight into the ground and teleport up to where they are currently. At this point, your team, again, if you're the starting team in the starting room, will leapfrog them into the third room and basically switch roles with them. Now, that team that's in the second room here that we're running up to is going to be the new team that's picking up the cubes and babysitting the boss, while we push ahead and basically open up the next door. So as we get into this next room, you'll kind of see how this works. There's going to be, again, a bunch of ads. There are overloads. There's a couple overloads in this encounter, so it is helpful to have the ability to stun them. Honestly, at this point, I would say if you're running like pretty much anything bursty, you can probably just kill them through, the ability to heal anyway, so not a huge deal, but you can stun them and make it a little bit easier. Do note, again, like I mentioned in the first room, that when you kill that Cyclops in this room, you're going to want to call that out so your team behind you knows that they're about to get two Cyclopses. That's very, very helpful. Once you've killed all of the enemies here up in this room, you're going to eventually get a Hydra that spawns in the center. Again, same with that first room as well. And when you kill this Hydra, it's going to open up a box that you need to connect to the door. So now at this point, we're going to explain this mechanic. So here's me explaining this mechanic basically when I was teaching this raid, and when you connect to any of these boxes and you basically by shooting it and standing next to it, you'll notice that you're going to have this like bluish white line that connects to you, and as you back away from it, if you get out of its range, it will either turn orange and then eventually break and no longer be connected to you. And your goal is to be connected from this box to each of the locks that are going to be on the little kind of checkerboarded doors in each of the rooms, and the best way to do this is you just want to make a straight line from the box to the door. There will be a numerous amount of potential locations for each of these boxes, which we will go over next. So in this second room, or basically where the boss teleports for the first time after the first main room that you start in, the box can be in 3 possible locations, either up on this kind of corner where I am currently looking at, near the staircase, kind of a little above the staircase near the center here. I don't have a perfect exact spot, but if you look this direction, if it's there, you'll see it for sure. And then the third location is actually where the box was in this run, right over the edge, as you can see currently on screen. Now in this third room where we just cut the footage a second ago, and we'll kind of replay it here in a second, the box can either be underneath, down in the middle, which you'll see in our actual clip, on the far left wall where I'm currently looking at, or off the right side edge. You're going to actually, like, if it's on this side, you're going to actually need to, like, look over the edge here. It'll be just, like, basically right where I'm standing downwards, and that'll be the third possible location. Again, it doesn't really matter where the box is. You just want to know where it is so that you have one person close enough to it to connect to that first line, and then have your second and third teammates, again, kind of progressively closer to the... Now again, as I mentioned before, going back to the actual clip, with this box below, you're going to need one person kind of right next to it to actually connect to it, and then your other 2 teammates are going to want to kind of line up towards the door, and that's going to allow that door to open, and again, you're going to switch roles with the starting team, with the boss now with you. Again, your team's going to be picking up the cubes, and the other team's going to be pushing forward. Now note in this final room, there will actually be 3 boxes you need to connect to the door, and if you do pick up Voltaic Overflow from the other team, a lot of times I'll like to go ahead and be a 4th person to connect this first lock, just because this is a pretty long line to get there. But again, as you kind of saw me run up there, the first box is right along the path. The second box is going to be here in the middle. Now what I would recommend is once you get that first box locked, the boss will teleport away and you won't have to be dealing with him at all for a solid minute plus. If you just stood here, the door will eventually open and progress the encounter automatically. But a lot of times I like to stand here, make sure everybody's in position, everybody knows what they're going to do next, and kind of set up before we do the next spot here. But again, once you're ready, you can go ahead and shoot that box, connect people to the door to unlock the second lock. And again, you don't need every single person to be, in this. You just need enough people to be able to get the line connected to the lock. But, a lot of times if everybody is in position, you're going to have everybody in this line. Once you do unlock that third lock, you're going to be in the final section of the first encounter. Here, the boss is going to teleport 3 times. Each time it will spit out one of the cubes, again, from the entire encounter that we've been doing. Do note that there's a bunch of overloads and cyclopses here. You don't have to kill them. Might be useful in terms of, staying alive, making sure everybody is, focused on just what they need to do in terms of picking up the cubes. But again, just like before, if we don't pick up those cubes fast enough, it will wipe the encounter. So one big tip I can give here is even if your Voltaic Overflow is, currently stacked up, it is definitely worth grabbing the cube. Like if nobody else is going to be able to get there in time, even if you have that Voltaic Overflow, you will take a death. But again, you're basically done with the encounter at this point. Much better to take a single death and finish the encounter than end up wiping and have to redo the whole thing. Next, we've got the second encounter, aka the baseball diamond encounter. Now, teams will run this a lot of different ways. I actually run it a way I've never really heard of anybody else running it, but it doesn't really matter. The short version is we need to get people to all 4 corners of the map to basically really start the encounter. This is kind of just like getting the encounter started by doing this. But what I like to do is I keep 2 people at the starting spot. We're going to have the raid flag and the first pillar. The other 4 people are all going to go down this left path. Do note that you are going to want anti-barrier for this, just because there will be 2 anti-barriers at each of these 3 other corners of the baseball diamond, so it'll make it a lot easier just in case they do get their shield up. Again, like I talked about in the first encounter, the champs can kind of get melted at this point, so maybe you don't need it, but good as a backup. Now, once you get here, you're going to want to connect to this pillar so that you give people on your team what's called Enlightened. And that Enlightened buff is needed to start killing these enemies once they get their white shields on them, which you will definitely see as we get a little bit further into this encounter. At this point, again, I like to have the 2 people at the starting plate, still at starting plate, or home plate, a lot of times people will call it. I'll keep 2 people on that left side where we just went to, and then we'll send 2 people to the far side of the room. Basically, this is the far corner from where we started, right? We started at home plate, we went to third base, kind of, if you want to keep that baseball analogy, and now we're at second base. From here, again, we're going to kill the Hydra, we're going to kill the 2 barriers, and you're going to have the 2 people here, again, connect to this pillar. Once you've done this, every time you connect to the pillar the first time, it is going to activate the portal that connects the 2 sides, right? So basically that third base side at this point, now that we've connected here, that portal will be active, as you saw me just kind of look for a second over where, if I go back just a second in the VOD here, you can see the blue portal activated in just a moment right there next to the stasis turret, again, peeked out there again. And that's going to allow people to rotate between the 2 sides instantly rather than having to go the entire way, right? So once we've connected here, you're going to want 1 person basically from that side on, again, the third base side or the left side that we originally went to come through the portal just to cover that back side for a little bit here. At this point, again, the 2 people that were originally in the back can go to the final side, again, first base if we want to go with that analogy the whole way through. Same idea, kill the Hydra, kill the 2 barriers. Once it's clear, go ahead and connect to this pillar. And once you've connected to the final pillar here, this is going to allow all the portals to be active. And again, for me, usually the role I will be doing here is basically covering second base or covering the back side of the map and then coming back to make sure I give whoever is here as my teammate the Enlightened buff. Because again, as we briefly talked about when it first came up, the Enlightened buff, as you can see at the top of my screen, has a 45-second timer. And if you don't have any left, if the timer runs to 0 and any enemies have the white shields on them, which we'll see here in just a second now that we've kind of progressed and I'm actually taking a second to kill the basic enemies. If you don't have Enlightened, you cannot break their shields. They will just again, continue to walk at you and be completely immune. And again, the main goal here, I guess, which we haven't even talked about, is to protect these confluxes. If anything sacrifices to the confluxes, you will potentially wipe. Again, if one enemy sacrifices, you're probably okay. If more than one, then you're very likely to wipe. So the more enemies you sacrifice, the higher chance of wiping. You don't want that, of course. But again, killing the enemies, protecting the confluxes. You need that enlightened buff to break the white shields. Do note again, if there's like a lot of enemies, your enlightened buff's running low, and there's a lot of enemies, you can just shoot the shields. You don't necessarily have to kill the enemies, because as long as the shields are broken, you don't necessarily have to have the enlightened buff. But very, very important to be re-upping that buff or re-getting that buff between you and one of your teammates whenever it's needed. So again, I'm kind of running interference here. I'm mostly covering the backside here, clearing this wave of ads that comes in, and then going back to my side on quote-unquote first base to give enlightened once it's clear. The one thing I will recommend is waiting for the message that'll pop up in the bottom left-hand corner after all sides have cleared their ads. That's how you, when it says undergrowth defenses subsided, that is going to be a really good time to make sure you get the enlightened buff. There is no limit to how many times you get enlightened. Like, you could just keep getting enlightened constantly. But at the very least, if you haven't gotten the enlightened buff within the last couple seconds, really, when you see that undergrowth subsided message, I would highly recommend doing that again, because that's when basically you're going to have no ads alive and no ads spawning for the next 7 to 10 seconds, let's say. And then after that, you'll get the undergrowth defenses deployed, I believe is the message, and that's when the ads come in again. So that just kind of keeps the pacing at a really good time, and allows you to make sure that you should have plenty of time on your enlightened buff before the next time the enemies subside, and then again you can buff up again and you're good to go. The other reason this is actually really, really helpful and really, really important is when the enemies do spawn in, right? So after you get the subsided message, you wait a few seconds, and then you get that deployed message. Whatever side gets hydras, which is going to be one of the 4 corners, whatever side gets the hydras, as you can see on the long path there on the, again, technically third base side for this round, that side will not be able to use their box to connect to their pillar to get enlightened. So if you don't already have enlightened, you're basically going to not be able to kill enemies. You can technically kill the 3 hydras. There'll always be, whenever the hydras spawn on your side, there will be 3 of them. So you can technically kill the 3 hydras quickly and then try to enlighten while the shielded ads are still up, but that gets very scary very quickly. So I'd recommend, again, just enlighten when you see the subsided message. That should protect you from all those issues. Now, once all 4 sides have killed their hydras, so again, basically it's getting to all 4 corners. You get 4 more rotations of ads at that point. Again, each side will get hydras once, and then the middle gates will break down and everybody can come to the center. Here, you're just doing exactly the same mechanic you've been doing the whole time. Clear out all the ads, hit the box to get your enlightened buff, and then get another wave of ads. Here, we're going to get 3 waves of ads, including the first wave that is basically spawning in as you're running to the center. So this is already the second wave at this point. But again, nothing really changes between the 3 waves. Once you've killed everything, wait till you see that subsided message, get the buff during that, and then you'll have plenty of time to kill the next wave of ads, and you'll be good to go. The one thing, I guess I technically lied, the one thing that does change on the 3rd wave of ads is there will be explosive harpies that come in. So they move really quickly and they can explode. So these guys are they're really the only, I would argue, threatening enemy in the encounter, really. They're definitely the most threatening enemy, if we want to at least say that, because if a couple of them explode on you kind of simultaneously, you can definitely just kind of die really quickly. There's these guys coming in here now quickly. Do know that they don't have shields, which is a little bit beneficial in case you for some reason don't have enlightened. Same with the hydras. The hydras also do not have, they have their swirly shields, but they don't have the enlightened quote-unquote shields, so you can kill those at any point. But once you've killed everything on that 3rd wave, the 2nd encounter is done. Now, the 3rd encounter is kind of similar to the 1st in that there are 2 different teams, but this time they're going to be doing 2 very separate things that don't really overlap. You'll see me in this encounter, I will be doing both roles just to kind of give you a guide and be able to see it visually for both roles, but normally you would only be doing one of the 2 roles. So the first role we're going to talk about here is going to be the kind of boss following role, and for that you're following the boss, which I will do here in a second. But as soon as the boss moves down one of the 4 paths, you're going to want to go ahead and go through that path. Do note that all 4 of these have a little bit of like a jumping puzzle aspect to them, so keep that in mind. But the first thing you want to do, which we're actually going to pause here for the first time, when the boss stops and turns around, he's going to kind of spin around like this, and he's going to spit out a white cube on the ground, again, just like in the first encounter. Very important that only one person picks this up, and do know that there's like a decent range where you can accidentally pick it up. So if you're not the person that's supposed to be picking this up here, I would recommend staying, pretty far back just so you don't accidentally grab it. Because if multiple people grab it, you'll both get the voltaic overflow. And as we mentioned in the first encounter, you don't want that voltaic overflow here. As I pick this up, you can see the voltaic overflow right here. Because you won't be able to pick up the next cube, which, again, as you can probably assume, we're going to need to do this multiple times, and we're going to need to rotate through who's picking up these cubes, just like the first encounter. Additionally, once you have picked up this cube, you're going to notice that there will be 3 wings on the boss. You can see this kind of this top wing, the left wing, and the right wing. And right now, none of them, you can't see the eyeballs, but if we go a little bit further here in the clip and let them kind of spin again, right here, you can start seeing the 2 eyeballs on the top. So basically the way we do this is everybody is assigned a separate wing. For this encounter and for this this example, I'm going to be assigned the top wing, but you can also kind of see the left wing down here and the right wing here. In a second, you might be able to see it a little bit better, but right now, there's no glow on either of these eyeballs, right? You can kind of see this inner one right here, and this one on the outer part of the wing as well. So if we play it a little bit further through, you'll notice that one of the eyes starts glowing, right? So the outer one is still not glowing, the inner one is glowing. It's glowing this bright red, right? And so technically, what you can't see on this clip right now, but all 3 of the wings are going to have the same eye glowing, right? So either all 3 eyes will be inner that are glowing, or all 3 eyes will be outer that are glowing. So again, this example is inner meaning the eye closer to the inside of, the boss, or like closer to the middle of the boss, I guess. And again, outer being the outer part of the wing. So very importantly here, the only person that can see which eyeball is glowing is going to be the person that picked up the cube and that is currently detained. So it is very important not only to be shooting whatever wing you are assigned, but also calling out to your teammates which wing that you see that's glowing so that they know which wing to shoot. Do note that if you don't shoot all 3 wings pretty much simultaneously, you have a little bit of a window, or shoot any of the wrong eyeballs, that the person that is attained will die instantly. So again, very important to do this mechanic. Again, both shoot the wing you're supposed to, and call out at the same time so that your teammates can do it as well. Technically, if you're really, really, really good and really, really fast, you can shoot all 3 eyes super quick, but this way is going to be a lot better, a lot easier, and again, incorporates everybody that is on the team into doing something, which I think is just better anyway. So as you can see here, we break that eye. Again, if you see one still there, a lot of times I'll help shoot, but teammates got the other 2 eyes, and we're good to go, head back to center, and basically repeat that process. So eyes team, that's all you're doing. Every single time you follow the boss, what a different person is going to pick up the cube. Again, watching out for voltaic overflow so that a different person can rotate and pick up the cube each time. Make sure that person calls out which one they're shooting, and everybody else shoots again whatever is called out, because it's always going to be all 3 inners or all 3 outers. Now, while that's going on, the other 3 people are going to be basically focusing on killing these minotaurs that will be spawning and picking up their motes. Every single time you kill a minotaur, it's going to drop 5 voltaic motes. It's very important that you pick up all 5 of them when it drops. And you're going to want to be usually killing these in pairs. I'm going to go over that a little bit deeper here in a second. But the most you can pick up in terms of motes is 10. And once you have 10 motes, you're going to need to go to where the big beam is coming from one of the pillars that we were defending in the last encounter. That is going to be where you need to be defending. And again, just like last encounter, if anything sacrifices, that can either wipe you or basically take motes out of this pillar. And for this encounter, again, same idea as last one. There's going to be these enemies with white shields on them. And if you do not have Enlightened, again, just like before, you will not be able to break their shields. The way you get Enlightened is by bringing motes to this box and dunking, and that will immediately give you Enlightened. One tip I can give is a lot of times I won't dunk right away, just give my team a little bit of extra time until the enemies are getting a little bit closer, because you get 45 seconds from the time you dunk the motes to get that Enlightened. So it gives your team a little bit longer of a window to kind of rotate through on doing this mechanic. So going back to the start of the encounter for a second, just as a tip for this motes team, The pillar is going to spawn, again, randomly in one of the four corners at the very start of the encounter. You'll also notice that the first Minotaur with this big kind of spawn animation here is going to spawn in that same lane every single time. Only the first one. All remaining Minotaurs after that will be random, but that can kind of give you an even easier way of finding where that pillar is for the first person. So as I said, usually you're going to want to grab 10 motes, but the strat I usually like to do here is whoever is the first person grabbing only grabs 5 motes. This is because the enemies will start spawning and kind of heading towards the pillar reasonably quickly, and if you're not pretty fast in terms of being able to find 2 Minotaurs, grab the 10 motes, and get down to the pillar quickly, enemies can sacrifice before you're even ready and even there in the first place. So the total amount of motes you need is 30, and technically if you can go 10, 10, 10 with each of the 3 people, that is like the most efficient or the fastest, but I think in terms of just safety purposes and consistency purposes, I would recommend first person grabbing 5, second person grabbing 10, third person grabbing 10, and then first person grabbing 5 again. Again, keeping in mind that once your teammate gets there, you'll just head back to the middle because you don't need to be at the pillar anymore because you can't defend it anyway because you won't have Enlightened by that point. Now, once you get 30 motes total dunked, you will notice that the Consecrated Mine is drawn to the overloaded relay. That's going to be the message that you're going to get. That means that basically the boss is coming to the thing that you're currently defending. That's what it's trying to tell you. So everybody's going to want to come to here if they're not already here. And when the boss gets here, you need to shoot all of the eyes on the boss just as fast as you can. If you have done Spire the Watcher, it's basically that exactly. And as soon as you break all the eyeballs, you're going to be able to do damage to the boss. I would recommend having a person with div here. It just makes, as you can see, the entire boss basically a crit spot. And as he's kind of moves sideways and moves all over the place, it can be a little bit hard to hit him, especially if he goes all the way in that corner. So having a div is really helpful. Once the boss goes immune, you'll be back to the center, and basically at this point you are just rinse repeating until the boss is defeated. And finally, we are at the final boss. For this encounter, again, this is one that a lot of teams can run a lot of different ways. I like to split into 3 teams. There's going to be 2 motes teams and a builder team. First, we will go over the motes team. So when the encounter starts, you're going to get a wave or maybe 2 of enemies. There'll be an angelic in the center. You're definitely going to want to kill it. And again, basically any other enemies as well. The main objective here is you want to definitely be protecting the 2 confluxes that will be in the encounter at all times, because just like last encounter, if anything sacrifices, you can potentially either wipe or at least be losing motes, which again, just like last encounter, we need 30 motes in each conflux in order to progress. Now, basically what's going to happen is there's going to be 2 weak points on the boss, as you kind of saw there a second ago. And when you break one of the weak points, it's going to create a portal that one of your Gambit teams, one of your mote teams is going to want to go into. And we'll have the second mote team go in here in a second. They're going to be doing the exact same thing. But most importantly, you want to be waiting until the team is ready to get pulled, right? So right now, the first Gambit team is in, and we are waiting for them to kill all the enemies and pick up all the motes and let us know. Once they let us know that that has happened, we are going to shoot that same shoulder. Again, you can start on the left side or the right side. I tend to like to start on the right side, so the right shoulder looking at him. And when you break that again, it will open up the portal once again. Very importantly, you're going to want to get into that portal immediately, again, if you are on that Gambit team that's supposed to be going in there. So this is Gambit Team 2. And when you get into this portal, you are going to be killing every single enemy. And in this encounter, every single enemy in these portals drop motes. You'll also notice that the motes do show up on the minimap, so that's very helpful, because you are going to want to make sure to pick up every single mote in this area. You're going to, again, like we said, we need 30 total, and we do get lucky on this one. The Hobgoblin rotation gives 18 total as a max. If you get the Minotaur rotation, you might only get 15, so you might literally need every single mote in order to be able to get enough here. Now, as I mentioned before, when the team is ready, again, they've killed everything and they've picked up all the motes, they're going to call out to the people outside that will shoot the shoulder again, and then this team is going to get teleported back to where the raid flag is and need to head to dunk their motes. So as you'll notice, if I go back in this footage a little bit, as soon as you come out, you're going to notice 2 boxes. And again, these are going to be the 2 confluxes that we're defending. So there's the one over on this kind of right side that you can kind of see a little bit of the box right there. And then the one over on the left side, this like more bluish, lightish box. There'll also be shown kind of by color. The right side is going to be the orange-ish color, and the left side will be the bluish white. So most importantly, whatever portal you went into, it's going to be the same colored motes. If you saw while we were in there, that's going to be, again, orangish motes. in the orangish portal, and you're going to be dunking in the orangish pillar. Or again, if it's easier to remember, just remember right side pillar, right side, or I'm sorry, right side portal goes to right side pillar. Whichever one's easier to remember, doesn't really matter. You can't dunk in the wrong one. So like, let's say you try to go over to, like, you have these right side motes, you have the tainted voltaic motes here. If you try to go to the left side pillar and dunk them, it won't let you. So like, it's not like you can accidentally screw it up. It's just, if you try to go to a pillar and it's like, why isn't it letting me dunk? You're probably at the wrong one. So again, here we went into the right portal. We need to go over to the right side and dunk our motes. And again, just like last encounter, as we briefly touched on, this will give anybody that dunks any motes here the enlightened buff to be able to defend these pillars from any of the enemies that have shields on them. At this point, if you've dunked 30 motes, you will, if I go back here in the clip a little bit again, once you've dunked 30 total motes, you'll get the tether is pulsing with dark or light energy, depending on what side you're on. That's how you know that you have dunked enough motes on that side. Very nicely is once you've dunked enough motes on that side, nothing can sacrifice there anymore, so that's very helpful. You don't really have to worry about that side so much. Additionally, there will be no more enemies with shields on that side. As you can kind of see here, the only enemies with the shields are spawning on the left side since we have the right side done and dunked. Again, at this point, now you're going to work on the left side. So Team 1 for the Gambit team is currently in the portal on the left side. Team 2 is just defending. Again, they are the only ones that can break the shields at this point since they are the only people with Enlightened. And once Team 1, again, has killed everything and picked up all their motes, you're going to break the left side of the boss's, the knee at this point, the left side little red spot, and you're going to go in that left side blue portal. Again, technically you can go left to right, but you want to go, opposite of whatever you did the first time. And here, again, same exact thing. You're going to kill all the enemies, pick up all the motes. Again, make sure to pay attention to the radar. That's very helpful because sometimes those motes don't pick up right away. And if you see something on the radar, you can kind of take a quick, run back to make sure you grab them all. Also note that each teammate can only pick up a maximum of 10. So if you do have 10 motes and you can't pick up anymore and you see some more, call out to your teammate that they can come over and pick them up. But again, once this is done, call out to the people outside. They will open up that portal for you to get you out of there again. And this time you're going to dunk the motes on the left side. And again, if done correctly, you will get the tether is pulsing with light energy at this point. So now we're going to tie it kind of all together from the other perspective. Again, those were the two kind of mote teams. Whatever team you're on, for mote team 1, mote team 2, doesn't really matter. That's literally just telling you, which order you're going into the portals. But for the other two people, the builder team, they are going to be kind of directing traffic. At least that's the way I like to run this. I like to kind of be on the builder side and direct traffic and kind of keep the pace and make sure everybody knows what role they are currently at and where we are in the encounter, right? So as soon as we get that those glowy spots popping up, again, we're starting on the right side. We are going to go ahead and shoot that right shoulder and open up that first portal for portal team 1. Two things are going to happen at this point. A piece of ground is going to go away, as you can see right next to me. You do not want to be standing there. That will kill you if you are standing on it when it goes away. And secondly, there's going to be a Cyclops on the pillar of the side that you broke. So there's two kind of high pillars. You saw the one on the right there. You'll see one on the left later when we break the left side. And again, you want to be ready to kill those as the builder team, because you're not going in the portals. The people that need to go into portals, they need to just be focused on getting in those portals before they go away. You're kind of statically staying out here. So your job is definitely to be killing those Cyclopses when they spawn. Now at this point, you're pretty much just kind of chilling here. You're defending, you're killing the goblins, make sure nothing sacrifices, waiting for that first team to let you know that they are good to get pulled. And as soon as they do, you'll go ahead and shoot that shoulder again. Second team goes in the portal, you kill another Cyclops. I do like to use Succession, or at least a high impact sniper rifle was really nice for this. I noticed I tried using Uzumi, or Uzume, however it's pronounced. It does not one-shot the shoulders, which is really annoying, having to do 2 shots. So 1 shot makes that a lot easier. Now, if we go back here again, I like to make sure, now I'm going to actually pause here for a second to talk about this. I like to make sure to not build when we are worrying about, the pacing of the encounter, right? I think a lot of times people do one of two things here if you've ran this raid but had maybe issues with it. If you've never ran the raid, this isn't going to be that relevant to you. But people will either not build at all, which I don't think is a good idea, or they will try to build too much and too often, which I think is potentially equally as bad, right? So when I know my teammates are about to need to get pulled out, right, I like to be in a position, I'm not currently building, I'm not currently doing anything else important, so I'm ready to kind of keep the progression of the encounter going at the rate that it needs to be. And then I'm also, ready to kill the Cyclops, as I talked about. But as soon as that's done, now Team 2 has just gotten in the portal, right? Like I'm not going to have to do anything in terms of picking, getting people in and out of portals anytime soon. So this is the time where I like to look and see if there's any good pieces of ground to build. Additionally, another tip for building here is, again, what are we talking about? We're going from right to left, right? So right now, I know that the team coming out of the portal is going to the right side of the map, right? They're going to the right side of the map. They're dunking on the right side. They're going to be over on the right side. So if I can build something on the left side, that's going to make it a lot easier for nobody to get accidentally tethered, people getting stuck in tethers. Again, if you've ran this raid, that should sound very familiar to you. So these are very useful tips, basically not building when you know you're going to be needing to do something else, and trying to build away from where other people might accidentally get in tethers and slow things down, get panicked, all that type of stuff. Very important. Now, if you've never ran this raid, or maybe you've never done this role before, let's explain what the building is, right? So this piece of ground, as I said, every time we break a shoulder and open up those portals, a piece of ground goes away. We can rebuild those as the builders here by basically using the same mechanic we've been doing the entire raid, right? So there's going to be a box, again, on top of the pillar, right up top here, and there's going to be those locks kind of on the outskirts of the map near where the piece of ground is removed, right? So by connecting two people kind of in that same line that we've been doing, again, most of the rest of the raid, you can connect from the box to the lock and rebuild the ground. So again, shoot the box, connect one person, connect second person, connect to the lock there, and then the ground starts getting rebuilt. Two things here. Healing grenades, very, very helpful. Healing turret, even better. Kind of keep you alive from the boss trying to shoot you, the ads trying to shoot you, maybe you even have to stand in the Vex milk that damages you for a little bit, right? And then second thing, as we talked about before, if the ground's going away, it can kill you. When the ground's coming back in, it can also kill you. So make sure you are not standing there as it's kind of rebuilding as well. Now again, here you can see we break another portal, and again, another piece of ground goes away. Now again, like I talked about before, that second team has just come out of the right side portal, right? Like this, we just pulled the second team. We're kind of staying in the progression of this encounter. We kill the Cyclops, very first thing. That's the most important thing. And now we want to progress the encounter and continue the encounter, right? Because that second team is coming out. They're going to dunk their motes on the right. Once they dunk, they have 45 seconds of enlightened before they run out. And again, we wouldn't have anybody else to break shields. So we want to make sure that the first team starts heading into the left, right? Because that's going to be the next part of this progression, right? So as soon as I kill the Cyclops here, I'm calling out to my team, team one, make sure you're ready to go on left side. I'm looking on the left side here, break the left side, team one goes in immediately. Again, first step, make sure I don't die to the ground here. Second step, go ahead and kill this left Cyclops at this point, right? So those are the kind of rotations that we want to do. And at this point, make sure nothing's sacrificing. And again, now we want to start building again. If the left side wasn't so removed here, I probably wouldn't want to build here, but because the ad wave had just kind of died down, I felt like it was safe again. But again, once the kind of wave dies down, once that next wave is good, we'll build the other piece of ground back as well. And again, you can do this really quickly, right? You don't it's much easier when there's no enemies around, there's no time pressure to it, you're very safe. The Cyclopses are dead, the pacing is good. It allows it to be a lot safer and a lot easier to be able to get these ground built versus if this enemy right here, this is a perfect example, these goblins were walking up and that ground was still needed to be built. I would not want to build it. I want to let my teammates that need to kill those shields over there without having to have, accidentally get tethered or anything else. Again, this right side, perfect thing to build because nobody's over here. There's no, there's no sacrifices that can even happen on the right side at this point. So any piece of ground I can get back for free, especially, in between when I'm not having to do anything else, very, very useful to do, again, because if it's a piece of ground that we get back, it's a piece of ground that, we won't have to worry about later. Now, again, that part was kind of rambly, but hopefully helpful and kind of in depth in terms of my thought process on this encounter and building in this encounter. But once we have filled both pillars with 30 total motes, get that tether pulsing again, next step is going to be the damage phase. Your first thing is you need to look at what color is in front of the boss. So if we pause here, you can see this kind of plus sign or this kind of, it's basically like the locks that are on the ground, but I call it a holographic lock in the sky. This is either going to be the orange or the blue that we've been talking about this entire encounter, right? Orange being right side and the bluish white being left side. So this being orange means that we need to build from the right side pillar to basically exactly where that lock is. It's going to literally connect to that floating plus sign. So we usually like to have one person on this pillar here. This is going to be the person that actually connects to the plus sign. You'll have one person here in the middle, which I will go here in a second. Again, you want to kind of kill all these ads in between and before you worry about tethering first. And then you're going to have one person near the actual pillar itself to kind of be the first connector. Usually three people can get this done and have enough distance. Honestly, you can do it with even less if you're really efficient about it. Do note that it is, like, if the boss gets in a really weird spot, like the boss kind of moves around, right? If the boss goes like really far away, sometimes it is beneficial to have 4 people here, especially when these pillars start moving, which we'll talk about in a second. But definitely 3 people is usually going to be good enough. So again, once everybody's in position, you can go ahead and shoot the box. It's going to connect to the close person, connect to the second person, and then connect to the middle person. And as soon as you see this kind of explosion on the boss, you know that it's going to be damage phase. So I like to do damage. So there's a lot of different things you can do in this raid, right? And a lot of different things you can do in raids in general. I like to do damage from the opposite side pillar that we're building from, right? So since we built from right, we do damage by the left side pillar. Twofold reason for this. First one is the rest of the team is nowhere near the tether. They don't accidentally get tethered. You don't have the tether going all sorts of weird different directions. Makes it a lot easier. Second reason is because the raid armor, if you have the raid armor from here, you can use either relay defenders or enhanced relay defenders. And if you're near the opposite pillar, near like the pillar you're not using, that will give you a damage buff. Do note that there's actually a way to extend this damage phase by using both pillars. I would not recommend that really at all unless you are very, very experienced, and in that case you're probably not watching this video. But yeah, technically you can use the first pillar and then use the second pillar kind of afterwards and get a longer damage phase, but honestly way easier to just do one pillar, then you don't have to worry about like any, it makes the mechanics a lot easier. Obviously the damage phase is a lot shorter, but I think it's worth the trade. But as soon as you get back over here, do damage, he'll float in the air, should be pretty easy to hit him, assuming he's actually like set up nicely. Sometimes he turns kind of weird and does some craziness. I wouldn't recommend Whisper, honestly, here. I don't feel like the damage phase is long enough, and if you miss, it was pretty bad. I just wanted to try it. And I also forgot to use the sniper mods that were active in the making of this film. They won't be active once once this raid is actually in the craftable rotation anyway, so I would not recommend Whisper here. I think Izzy GL swaps, like kind of the OG strat from way back in the day, could very easily be a very good damage strat for this, especially with some of the GL mods that are coming next season. So a thought there, but again, damage shouldn't be too relevant. You do have up to 4 damage phases if needed in order to kill the boss. So one final thing I wanted to talk about is after a damage phase, the pillars can change location. So here in a second, you'll see that this blue pillar, the left side, your bluish white pillar, moved, right? So like the normal spot where it always starts on the first phase is like right here on the far left of the screen, which you can kind of not really see. But here it is moved like kind of all the way to the left side. And then the orange one actually moves kind of more near the center. So it is very important to pay attention to where this box is and where this like kind of big, light is, because those can move. There are, I think, 5 total possible locations where they will be. The bluish white one will always be further left, and the orange one will always be further right. Like, that will never change. It just, again, they can move in terms of where they actually are in exactness in the encounter, if that makes sense. So actually here too, you can kind of see, like, normally we don't build these like further out ones, but as I will try to do here in a second, as soon as the damage phase ends, you do have a little bit of time to build while like nothing is happening. So if you can try to get a piece or two of ground back here, especially when the pillars start moving like way out of where they normally are, that can be very beneficial towards, getting a cleaner next phase. And that's all for today. I know that video ended up longer and very detailed, but hopefully it was helpful. And I will be doing runs and helps on my stream probably throughout this season for this raid, and even div runs if anybody still needs divinity. So definitely come on by if you are interested, or for the new dungeon as well. We'll be doing the new dungeon a lot as well too. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.